Hello listeners and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing energy matters in an informal setting. This week, the European Commission proposed a flurry of new measures to intervene in Europe's wholesale energy market. What are the current proposals on the table, and will they be sufficient in bringing prices down and shielding energy consumers across the continent? Or could they cause unintended consequences with potentially harmful impacts on the workings of the market? Helping me, Richard Sverrisson, to dissect the key elements of the interventions is Simone Mori of Enel. A warm welcome to you, Simone.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Let's start by discussing your views on the measures proposed by the European Commission this week. Were you happy with them?
Well, I would say it's quite an important step forward. As always, is the debate and the evolution of European policy-making process. It needs a lot of time. And I don't want to be, too critical, but the first reaction very often is slow, and in some cases also denial. Then there is the consciousness that something that will be done. Then there's a bit of dash debate about different countries and different interests, because what we are talking about is something which is really divisive in Europe, because there are reasonably different interests. But at the end of the day, it seems that the logic is coming, and we believe the logic basically is to find a solution for the root cause of the problem of gas prices in Europe today, which is the excessive volatility of the TTF index and all the gas hubs around Europe, because which are in some way connected to TTF, and unfortunately the 85% more or less of contracts of gas in Europe which are directly linked to TTF. And the fact that for the first time the proposal approved by the Commission introduces the concept of a price control at TTF level is a very important step forward. There are many details to be defined. We have to understand how this will be applied. But I think it's a very important step forward.
Would you then agree with the Commission that the prices on the TTF have been artificially inflated?
Yeah, well, especially in the overall prices, because, the intraday volatility is a problem, but I would say it's not the key problem. The TTF prices are, there is a big debate among the analysts if TTF price is reflecting the fundamentals or not. It's very hard to say, but for sure, the fact that for a quite long period of time, TSOs from all European countries had to buy at any price in order to fill up storage is creating a big impact on the price indexes. Probably this market, especially TTF, are not liquid enough to guarantee a strong resistance toward manipulation in the short term. Then I believe that more than the intraday, which is important, but what is very, very important is the cap on the average price, which is, by the end, not something strange. I mean, we are a power company. We used to live with cap on market pool, as you know. Until a few years ago, I mean, all major European pools have a price cap in order to cut the excessive prices, excessive volatility. So it's something that is in some way in the culture of market. This is not an anti-market measure. It's something in the culture of market. Well, as I said, it's not easy to say, to establish if there was, what was the manipulation. But for sure, artificially in the sense that basically the need to fill up storage, and then the fact that TSOs were buying at any price. And some operation carried out probably by traders, probably by exporters in some specific phase. Well, it's difficult to say, but it's very hard to believe that these skyrocketing prices were only a reaction on the fundamentals, where, today we have the storages are full. And they say it's not by chance that once the Commission started to discuss about the price cap seriously, which basically was at the beginning of September, when the Commission called a couple of technical meetings to look inside the topic of the cap in a serious way, the TTF prices dropped quite significantly. Of course, there is a reaction on the expectation of traders. Of course, if you have a position and you believe the European Commission may do something, they will change. They will show their position on that. But it's clear that at the end of the day, let's say the discussion on price cap on TTF already brought very good results, because even if you don't have yet a cap, so the very fact of discussing about it, of making it a potential reality, created an expectation which brought the market to a more reasonable level.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you have traders operating with a blank check, obviously there are going to be some consequences of that. But what I gather this week the Commission has tabled is also a mandate for the ministers at EU level to develop a market correction mechanism to limit prices of the TTF. Is this something that you think is necessary?
Yeah. This is basically what we are. Well, there are several ideas. Some of them are concurrent, some of them may be alternatives, but it's clear that when you have such levels of volatility and spiking prices, the idea of saying, this is just the proper reaction of markets to the market conditions is not the answer, because there is manipulation. Yeah, in the broad sense, I'm not only referring to operators making specific operation in a specific moment, but when you announce that your export as a big country, as a big exporter, as a Sverrisson, that your supply will be reduced, that's manipulation. When one of the most important pipelines is blowing up, that's manipulation. And again, when the law or commission says or a government asks a TSO to go and buy any price, it's technically it's manipulation. It's not a negative. It's not necessarily a negative word, manipulation, but technically it's a manipulation. So defending the fact that we have to keep a market going without touching it, I think it's a quite naive position, because this is a heavily manipulated, artificially modified market, if you don't like the word manipulation, and just letting it go, it's not a solution. I'd say all people, all European citizens and companies are paying the price for this in some way ideological approach to the fact that markets are to be just perfect, because when the market is not working, you have to intervene.
So do you think the market is broken, or think these are just emergency temporary measures that will carry us through the next sort of 3 to 6 months?
Emergency temporary measure, I would say. This is an emergency temporary measure. I don't believe the market is broken forever. Now there is, of course, the crisis is pushing the market in a very special condition. That's not forever. Of course, we may have a different reflection on how European gas market was created. It's very hard today. We all probably, I believe that also on your side, we were very happy when finally we started to discuss about the decoupling, for example, between oil price and gas price. And under many circumstances, this was a very good sign, because of the market dynamics in gas were quite interesting. But of course, what we discovered today, for example, is that the gas market in Europe, which is, again, we have to remind it, is a big import market. So because it's a market based on import, because basically we are reducing our domestic production quite drastically, was delinking its dynamics from a very big global market and linking its own dynamics to something which is smaller and easier to manipulate, as we say now. So I'm not saying that I was wrong when I was among the ones saying, that's a very good fact. The coupling is very good. So I'm not blaming anybody. I was among the ones saying it was very good. Today, probably we look at it in a different way, because, of course, oil market is much more robust, is much more less volatile. And today, when you have, for companies having a contracts linked to oil, are in a much safer waters than companies having a TTF linked contract. So this will be more structural, but I think it will take more time.
In many ways, the gas market is very global as well. It depends on a lot of the factors, such as demand in Northeast Asia, South Asia even, and also supply at different parts of the globe. But do you think the proposals from the Commission to create a kind of LNG index will better reflect the global fundamentals rather than, you say, this kind of local European level fundamentals that have been driving the TTF. So is that something you would welcome, Simone?
It's a nice try. I mean, to find a way to have a more an index which respects more the global dimension of this market is a good idea, I think. The problem that an index usually is an output, it's not an input. So you may not define your index by yourself. The index is a consequence of the commodity and the dynamics of the commodity to what this index is linked. And you are right when you say that gas is a global market, but it's a global market for the marginal amounts, no? At least for us, I mean, a large part of European market is covered by gas coming through pipeline. The LNG is a bit of different stuff, and in any case, it's not by chance that we are also paying LNG. Our LNG prices are very high, much higher than the rest of the globe, even if this is a global market. So it's global, but it's much more local. So that's a different stuff. But in any case, you are perfectly right. That's a good idea to try to have an index which is more coherent with the global market dynamics and also try to consider LNG a market which is quite separated from the market of gas coming through pipes. And that's the reason why the proposal, and we have been as a company strong supporter of the proposal of a cap on TTF, as you know, which has been originally presented by the Italian government. And there was some misunderstanding at the beginning, but the proposal never implied the idea to putting a cap on LNG, because it would be crazy to be backfiring Europe. So it's clear that once you accept the idea of limiting prices and volatility on TTF, you have to accept the idea that you are splitting the market into parts. Market for pipes and a market for LNG with different market dynamics. I mean, Europe is among the proposals, they are also trying to put in place something similar to what Europe did for the vaccines. So the supply processes, that could be, I don't know how easy will be to realize this idea, but it's an understandable idea. Let's become a stronger player in the global LNG market in order to have a bigger voice. Let's see if it will be possible to realize or not.
Absolutely. I mean, there's still a lot of discussions that need to be made, a lot of decisions that need to be made as well. So we'll see what happens over the coming weeks. But there's also proposals for an EU price cap for gas generation in the power market, the so-called Spanish intervention that's already occurring in Iberia and Portugal, where you're very active. The Commission has said it needs more analysis at the EU level, but how have you found that it sort of worked in Spain, this measure?
In Spain, the measure is working reasonably well. It is expensive because this is not a cap. This is a subsidy. They call it cap, but it's a subsidy. So basically, you limit the price that you may ask for your power production when it's produced by gas, but you are not limiting the cost of gas. So somebody has to pay for the difference. And there is a quite complex cost subsidies measure. In Spain, it's working pretty well because if you look at the power prices, they are much lower than the average in Europe. But Spain is a quite special situation because it's not importing Russian gas, and there's very little influence for what we know of gas linked to TTF. And second, Iberia is not only Spain and Portugal. Iberia has a very little connection with the rest of Europe. So there is the consequence of having an extra export of power, because you are limiting the price of power, then your power becomes more competitive, and then you tend to export your power to other countries, which is a paradox, because today, if you want, there is a little contribution from the side of Spanish customers who are subsidizing gas, and they are producing more electricity, burning gas to export it. It's a bit of a paradox. But this is an acceptable paradox because it is one place quite isolated with very little links. But it would be very difficult to apply the same model in countries which are more interconnected. At the European level, the impact of those measures is exactly the same as introducing the revenue cap on renewables and nuclear, which is what Europe did again in the proposal of the Commission to put a 180 Europe megawatt hour cap. The technically is exactly the same measure. The measure is aimed at squeezing the difference between the marginal price and the revenues which a renewable or a nuclear producers may get. And it's okay. And it's an emergency. It's exactly the same that you asked me on the gas cap. As emergency measure, it's okay. We applied this in Italy. It works. Why is good? Why is bad? It's good because it's easy to put in place. It's easy to remove. So once the day after you believe that the crisis is over, you just disconnect and the market may go back to its original configuration. What is negative is that this is not fixing in a structural way the problem, and the problem is that it doesn't make much sense to have a renewable production exposed to the short-term fluctuation of commodity. We have been working years in order to promote a transformation of the European market model towards a long-term model and mechanism. We have been working here for that because it doesn't make any sense. Why you have 70% of renewables? Having the renewable remuneration exposed to the volatility of gas doesn't make any sense. That's bad for companies, that's bad for customers. So we believe that something has to be made in order to introduce a structural transformation of the market, which should be much more based on long-term contracts. And then it will be much more natural for renewable plants to get a price which is closer to the LCOE of the plant, which it's, let's say, the average cost of the plant. So that should be a market which is having more and more renewables. It's important to have a market which is much more related to the average cost of production instead of a marginal cost of production. I don't want to be too theoretical, but that's basically what those measures are trying to do by putting a cap on the gas price in Spain, or taxing the extra revenues on renewable in a short-term market. It doesn't make much sense. I mean, because the idea is, okay, I keep the market what it is, as it is because it's beautiful. Then I don't like the result of this beautiful market, and I modify the results. So it's a bit a contradiction of terms. What it should be done is a structural reform going more and more towards long-term contractualization, and we believe it's badly needed. We are working actively on that, and we are pushing a lot this idea.
So the marginal pricing model then is no longer fit for purpose then, Simone, you think?
No, marginal price is good for, if marginal price is good for marginal production. Marginal price worked very well in the as efficient dispatching methodology, and we need it. We will need it in the future until we have fossil fuels competing for the last part of the market. We will need a marginal price, but this is for that. It's kind of it's a short term, let's say, dispatching optimization of the market. But if you look, we made a research. We asked an independent advisor to make a research to evaluate what's the share of investments carried out in Europe after the liberalization, just thanks to the market dynamics. It's a small minority. It's a small minority. A large part of the investment, even in the fossil fuels, not only in Europe, be carried out through some kind of long-term tendering, capacity markets, strategic reserve, just because volatility is not what people need in order to decide to make an investment decision or a disinvestment decision, because that's the same. You may look at the two different ways. So we believe that Europe badly needs a deep reform, shifting much more towards long term and keeping the system marginal price for what it is. A fantastic, efficient methodology for defining which plant I want to dispatch tomorrow.
A final question, Simone. We're going to see a lot of these policy measures being decided over the coming days and weeks. What would be your one wish to put to the policymakers during this process?
For us, big point is to tackle in the short term the issue of gas price where the problem is, which is a TTF cap. this is the only way to bring back the debate towards the domestic level in a more rational way. Because today, politicians, I understand the politicians, but they have to face problems at domestic level. I mean, with the bills, the energy bills, and they're doing, in some cases, rational things. In other cases, completely irrational things. Huh? Because, I mean, if you hit a company with a measure and then you have to give them €1 billion in order to save it or to bail it out, it's not very rational. If you want, it's just a big mess. But it's understandable. This is, for politicians, this situation is very difficult to manage. And I think that is the problem number one. We are giving, look at the windfall profits of a country, also friendly countries, quality-wise. We are not talking about Russia. We are talking about Norway, about the US. I mean, we are wasting an incredible amount of European financial resources in order to be loyal to a theoretical idea of a short-term market, which is clearly not working. So we really believe that this is the priority number one. We balance the price in Europe to a more reasonable level, relaxing a bit the situation, then starting to work on the structural measures, which are, I think, very much focused. REPowerEU I think is a very good approach. Energy transition is a great way not only to decarbonize Europe, but also to increase the security of supply for European citizens and companies. That's the right way to go. But this is structural. Now we have to manage the short term, otherwise there is not room in the mind of politicians to manage the structural.
Simone, thank you very much for being a guest on the Montel Weekly podcast.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a great pleasure, and it's let's see what happens. Hoping to have the chance to meet again a short period of time in a better condition of the market and on the energy prices in Europe. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. So listeners, you can now follow the podcast on our own Twitter account, aptly named the Montel Weekly Podcast. Please direct message any suggestions, questions, or, let us know if you think you have a good idea for a guest on the show. You can also send us an email to podcast@montelnews.com. Lastly, remember to keep up to date with all that's happening in energy markets on Montel News. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you and goodbye.